Do you have period underwear?
I don't.
Oh my! No.
I mean, I do and I don't. Okay, so sometimes I wear two pads, like this, overlapping. So I go in with two pads and an underwear and tissue.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the vlog. My name is Ndiro Ganga and today we are hanging out with Janet Mbugua, who's everybody's besties, but she's mine personally because you're sitting in bed. And we want to discuss something that is sort of, I don't want to say taboo because you've literally lifted the veil of shame and taboo off the period topic. May we will be celebrating on the 28th World Period Hygiene Day.
Yeah.
And it's very important that as girls, as women, we just have a small sit down and discuss period hygiene. You can be a part of this conversation down below in the comment section. The question today is, how long do you take before you change your sanitary towel or your tampon? So tell us in the comment section and Janet and I will be getting into the details. Janet, when somebody says period hygiene, what comes to mind?
First, thank you for this conversation. This makes me so happy, and it's really dope that you're doing this. Period hygiene, what comes to mind is just how you can keep yourself clean and comfortable when you're on your period, because it is a very natural biological process, but it can be messy. So you have to manage that. It's blood, and sometimes it's blood and there's discharge and all these kinds of things, and sometimes there's a foul odor or a foul smell. So period hygiene has always been a big deal for me, and I think it's something we really need to amplify and allow girls and women to have access to.
Yeah.
And so period hygiene is how do you keep yourself clean and comfortable, that you are clean and comfortable during your period.
And speaking of clean and comfortable, the first question that will come to my mind and the mind of anybody who's watching is, when you're on your period, how many showers should you take?
I think,
bearing in mind Nairobi is really cold right now.
I know. I really think that depends, right? A period is it's individual. Everybody is so different. For some people, I think it's important to shower in the morning and evening, right? Depending on whether you have access to those kinds of resources. So best case scenario, if you do have access to water, which a lot of women and girls don't have, then if you can, you shower twice, because when you wake up, you still need to shower and wear a new sanitary pad, assuming you haven't changed one in the night. And before going to bed, just so that you're comfortable, you can do the same, because remember, you have been on your period the whole day. So ideally, I think that's great. Some people may shower more than 2 times a day. They might go into 3, depending. Others might do once, so I really think it depends on what's comfortable for everyone. I would recommend at least twice.
Yeah. And is it hot shower or cold shower? Because some people say hot showers just help. It's soft on the
soothing.
body. Yeah, it's very soothing.
Again, individual. I love my hot showers. I think mine are scathing hot. Like, I think they could really literally scald me. As for some people, a cold shower works. I really think I would recommend warm to hot. But if somebody out there is a ninja and wants to do cold showers, then that's also fine.
And when you say being comfortable and you shower before you change your sanitary towel, that brings in another question of how long should you wear your sanitary towel. But also that is very tricky, because like when I was in my teenage years, I would wear a sanitary towel until I'm uncomfortable, then I'd go change it. And now in my mid-20s, you cough, you go to change it.
Laugh.
You laugh. So how does this thing work? Because it's like you're figuring it out every day.
And I think that's exactly what it is. Your body changes, your cycle changes. I know for a lot of people, when they started their period in their teens, mid to late teens, it was irregular. They would have it and then it disappears for a month or 2, then it comes back. And so it really evolves. Your period doesn't stay the same throughout the years. It is very different, and I always encourage people to kind of work with an expert or just be aware of what's happening in your body and what changes are happening. And if there's a matter of concern, then have a medical expert examine. So in terms of changing pads, I really felt you on the... I'm on my period right now, by the way.
Yeah. So you can't laugh.
I can't laugh, so stop making me laugh. Don't make me cough.
Yeah.
And so I also, like you, it's to change when you feel like you've soaked your pad. I have a very, very heavy period, especially the first 2-3 days. So I tend to change my pads. I don't use tampons. I know some of my friends think that's really weird, but I use pads. Maybe every few hours, maybe every 3, 4 hours, sometimes less, sometimes more, the first few days. Some people say that 8 hours is an okay time to spend with one sanitary pad. And they say that because of toxic shock syndrome, or TSS, which has been known to, if you keep a tampon more than 8 hours, they say you are at risk of TSS, which has really been able, in the worst case, the very worst case, and not to be alarming, people have died with toxic shock syndrome based on using a tampon for more than 8 hours. So they're highly recommending, especially if it's a tampon, please don't have it in for more than 8 hours. If you're going to sleep with it, make sure if you're able to change it at some point, do so. But don't stay with your tampon the whole day, the whole night. Maybe you pass out, and by the time you wake up, I think there's a story of a lady who woke up and she had to go to the hospital. She lost both her legs because of toxic shock syndrome, because of keeping her tampon too long. So it's something we really need to educate people about. It's not, it can't be taken lightly. And at the same time, it's not to raise too much alarm. But TSS exists. And so if you are using a tampon more than 8 hours, they say make sure you change it, whether or not your flow is light or heavy. For a pad, I think TSS there's less risk with pads, even though most people, I think our ages prefer to use tampons. And so, again, 6 to 8 hours with one pad, and then change it. If your flow is heavy, then change it according to what's comfortable for you, so that you don't feel like you are drenched or soaking wet with your pad.
Have you ever forgotten to carry a pad? And then now you just have to find sitting angles with the sanitary towel that you're wearing.
I think I have. It's been a while since I forgot. Nowadays I have like a pad case that has pads, tampons, a menstrual cup. It's just in case. It's almost like a mini kiosk in case somebody needs one out there. So now I don't, but yes, I have. I've stained. I know you were talking earlier about having stained. I've stained a lot.
And speaking of stain, you know, the day that I stained, we were doing our show, we were recording Debrief, and I was in a peach dress, and I was feeling myself that day in new pants. I'm walking around, and then my director, Toywa, just swarms around me and covers me, and I'm like, why are you being dramatic? She takes out a pad, and I'm like, oh, I've soaked. I have a towel in my bag.
Oh, wow.
And Ceci was the one who was asking me, Ceci is our producer. She was asking me, how long did you wear it? And I said, a couple of hours. And she said, that's so long. If your flow is heavy, then you really need to be on your toes. But the thing is, I wasn't as embarrassed getting soaked now that I was the first time I ever soaked, because it's in nature. You know, in nature.
I like that you've said that though. It's important that it's normalized that way. I think it's encouraging for you to say something like that. But it's funny because I did a post, I think a few months ago, where I put a picture of my stained pajamas. And this was a few months ago, literally. This is just maybe 3-4 months ago. And I put a picture of my stained pajamas. And in the caption, I talk about how I was actually walking in front of my sons, and they're 5 and 2. And they asked me if I've sat on red flowers. Now, I could have died inside, by the way. So when you say about shame, it's funny how sometimes it still follows you. I'm in my 30s, and I literally was like, so we were with our nanny, and she just said, you have a stain. So I changed it and I soaked, but I posted it because I said, isn't it crazy how even now we still stain? And then we still get embarrassed. And I think it's all this stigma and embarrassment that comes with how we begin our periods. You're always told things like, don't talk to boys or don't play with them. Make sure you're a little girl, but you're being forced to act like a woman so quickly. And I think you carry that into adulthood, which has its sadness in it, because then you're still shrouded, and you remember being that scared little girl who stained her period in class and literally didn't want to see anyone for 1 week. And yet as an adult, you still remember those moments. So it's great that you've said you're not as concerned, because it means you've evolved. And
also, like, people always think women know what they're going through. We are clueless. This month, your body is working with you. Like, there's a day right now, day 1, I will bleed so heavily. And then day 2, day 3, there's no period.
That's the thing, right? And so, like you said, we also don't know what's happening.
We're figuring
we also
it
get
out
surprises
as we go.
Our body likes to surprise us.
Exactly.
It just pulls up on you.
And speaking of period surprises, have you ever felt like, I finished my periods. I finished. You wore your liners for 2 days, and then you pull out your nice underwear. Like this.
It's always when you have the best underwear.
I know.
And it just gets ruined.
Do you have period underwear?
I don't.
Oh my. No.
I mean, I do and I don't. Okay, if I'm on my period, I wouldn't wear like super colorful.
Yeah.
I'll go for the grays, the navy blues, the darker ones, as opposed to sort of like the cream or peach ones or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're right. I guess I subconsciously say I'm on my period. I need to wear these kind.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. You think you finished your period, and then surprise, 3 days later. So
Yeah.
I wear liners every single day of my life. Yeah. So if I'm not on my period wearing my pad, I just wear liners.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all the time, every day.
Okay.
Even when I'm home.
I think that's also a trick. It sort of keeps your underwear like clean away from discharge.
I was
and
just
stuff like
losing so many underwears.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is expensive.
It is.
Let me use liners because sometimes after my period, 2-3 days later, there'd be this period discharge, which sometimes would actually fill my liner.
Yeah.
And I just realized I'm just wasting underwears a lot.
Yeah.
So for the last maybe 1 year, maybe more, I've been on liners every day. So I cannot go without liners. I carry them in my bag.
Yo.
Yeah.
I remember there's some day, and I felt it in my system. It's so weird. I never know when my periods will come. They just creep on me. And I was wearing nice white underwear, the expensive stuff, feeling myself. And then I felt movement in my stomach.
And you're like,
Janet, I ran.
Oh.
I ran back into the house, in the living room, and removed my underwear. By the time it was down, there was blood.
Oh.
So I just had to change quickly and go to work. I'm sitting in a bus, and I see the guy next to me looking at my legs.
Yeah.
And then I look at my leg. There's blood.
There was blood trickling down your leg.
I think when I was removing my underwear, my underwear would have caught the blood.
Oh, wow.
So I think it trickled down. So I had to just put my leg like this and just,
just wing it till you get
be calm.
Yeah.
And I tried looking at him. He did look at me again. So I don't know if he saw it or if he was just playing cool.
Or whether you were being paranoid as well. Yeah.
So I got to the office and cleaned it, and I was like, is this embarrassment worth staining my white underwear?
Yeah.
I was like, the jury will decide.
Yeah, the jury. It's the jury to decide.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many embarrassing moments that we still experience because our bodies are, and it's okay. You do get surprised. You do get a little bit embarrassed, but it's important that I think as you continue on in life, you just pick up really quickly. It shouldn't reduce you to, I'm not going to leave my room ever again, which happens to a lot of girls. It's so sad. Like young girls, they just get horrified. If they stain, that's it. They will lock themselves away. Worst cases, girls get depressed. It's a real issue. And so we have to make that transition very comfortable for them. But I think for us who are in our 20s or 30s, we still, a lot of women even who commented on my post were still saying they are completely filled with embarrassment and shame. So I think the more we have these conversations, it's the more to say, hey, it's okay if it happens. It was an accident. You change, you clean yourself, and you pick it up and move. And it's fine because your body is going through something natural, and surprises happen.
And speaking of just that routine, do you like have a period routine? Let's say like the changing process, because sometimes when I was younger, I'd just go to the bathroom, use tissue, clean up myself, then wear a new towel. But the older I grow, I feel like I need to go with a wet wipe, clean myself, then dry myself with a tissue before I change my towel.
Yeah. Oh, that's your routine.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I think I make sure that I have something that is, so I go in, when I'm going into the bathroom, my period routine is I go in with a pad or two. So sometimes I wear 2 pads, like this, overlapping. I know, and it's just full coverage in the front.
Yeah. Wearing a pad is mathematics. Because if you don't get it right, it will leak. It will leak.
There you go. So because I didn't want to have to torture myself with that mathematical equation, I do 2. So they meet like this. So let's say this is your underwear, this is pad 1, and this is pad 2. And one covers all the way to the front, and one all the way to the back. Yep, and then at least it minimizes staining, except sometimes on the side. Yesterday, I think, was my first or second day. So with all that, I still managed to somehow stain on the side of my underwear. But it's fine because I was in black, and I don't think it showed on my trousers.
Yeah.
So when I'm going, my period routine, I go in with 2 sanitary towels, with tissue. And then I prefer to use water than wipes. Wipes I can use in my inner thigh. Like if it's messy and there happens to be a little bit of mess between your thighs, which can happen, then I'll use wipes on my thighs. But if it's to use around my vaginal area, I would rather use tissue with a little bit of water and then just wipe going backwards. And then I feel really fresh and clean, and then I wear the pads. So I remove the ones I had, I wear the 2 pads. put on my underwear. I also go in with a fresh underwear in case I've stained. So I go in with 2 pads and an underwear and tissue.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm fine. By the time I'm leaving, I feel fresh. I wash my hands, and then I dispose of the pads. And if I've messed the underwear, I wash it and leave it on, and then I'm good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my routine.
And disposing, like, how do you dispose it? Do you wrap it in tissue, newspaper, or the covering of the new pad?
The covering of the new pad, covering of the new pad and tissue in case it's really soaked, just for extra cover. And then I dispose of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a time you shared a story. I think you were coming from New York to Nairobi and you got your periods on the plane.
Yeah, that was bad. That was really, first of all, I was like, why?
Yeah.
Why do you wait until I'm doing long distance? So I was making noise at my period. Poor thing. It's like, I'm just here. Hey,
yeah,
just doing my thing. Yeah, I remember then I'm sitting at the furthest end of the seat. So because I'm tired, I'm like, okay, I need to create a path for myself, make sure I've not stained.
Yeah.
And what I did eventually, when I just got the courage and energy to go, I go with my entire handbag.
Yeah.
And I went in and I had really soaked the pad, but thankfully it hadn't gone to my underwear. And then I just did the same routine that you asked me about. I removed them. I had a fresh underwear. I don't think I used the fresh one because it was fine. And then I just stayed alert. I refused to nap. I just said, I'm not going to nap. I'm going to watch movies. I'm just going to be awake and be alert in case I soil myself. And I'm alone. It's not like I have friends or allies on the plane. And so, yeah, that was a nightmare because I was cramping and it was, I think, an 8 or 10 hour flight. So,
yikes.
I remember that post because a lot of people shared the worst places that their periods have started. Some said in the middle of a funeral. Others said when I was a bridesmaid in the middle of a wedding. And it's funny and sad.
It is, because I was on a 13-hour plane from Beijing to Addis Ababa.
Yeah.
And then the genius in me, sometimes when you pack your sanitary towels in the bag that you check in with, sometimes they take sanitary towels, lotion, they confiscate. So the genius in me said, these bags have to get home. So I put them in the bag that goes the other way around. And then I get to the plane and I'm like, okay, sis, that was really smart, but how are you going to change? You're here for 13 hours.
What did you do?
I'm seated at the farthest end of the seat. There are 2 Chinese men. They don't speak English. And you know when you're on your periods, you'll feel uncomfortable. There's places in the plane, so you have to keep thinking like, will they smell me? And I went to the toilet. Honestly, airlines need to improve on the quality of sanitary towels that they put in the toilet. They were so light. I was bleeding so heavily. So I had to keep going. It was so uncomfortable.
And for 13 hours. 13
hours. Then I had another 5 hours in Bole to kill. And I don't have my bag. And then the airport at Bole doesn't have sanitary towels. So I had to stand up because I can't see it. So literally, I was standing up. We got to JKIA. Our bags were left in Kigali, so I had to wait for another 2 hours at JKIA. By the time, and you're sitting in an Uber and you're sitting like this because you don't want to stay in his seat. It's an Uber. By the time I got home, people were like, what did you bring us? I said, I want to go to the bathroom, please.
Before you do anything.
Yeah.
But it also speaks to how friendly all these public spaces need to be.
Yeah.
There needs to be pads absolutely everywhere. There needs to be different types of pads. So pad dispensers should be a norm. You have condom dispensers. I don't know why pads is an issue. And I know that now in different countries around the world have become progressive, whether it's Scotland, the UK, even let's say China and the aeroplane, at least even having pads on the flight is still a plus.
Yeah.
I just think it needs to be completely normalized, and there should be variety of products. They should have pads and tampons where possible. And I always say the same thing as well for, even diapers. As a mom, it's just you find a lot of places have not evolved to being able to create access for women when it comes to either diapers or pads, and it really makes me upset. It's starting to change a little bit. I think there's 1 or 2 places, even in our country, in Kenya, that have pad dispenser machines. I just think it needs to become a norm. There's some universities abroad that have pad dispensers in the bathroom. Let's get to that. They should be in the workplace. They should be in the planes. They should be in restaurants. It should just become part and parcel of what is on offer, because we do get surprises, as we've mentioned, and it should be easy. I'm going to go to the restaurant and I know in the bathroom I'm going to find pads. I just think that's how commonplace it should be. And when we talk about period equity, you realize we're not there yet, because little things like that are not considered.
And it's the little things that
make a very big difference. Yeah.
And we can't get to a place where we are fully versant with period hygiene without talking about access to some of these period products. And this is something you're always passionate about and championing, ensuring that each and every single person has access to period products so that they can have dignified periods.
There you go. That's the word. It's about dignified periods. And everyone deserves to have dignified periods. People shouldn't be using rags. People shouldn't be using, in the worst cases, in some of the most remote areas, a bit of the mattress or chicken feathers or soil and the most unsanitary products ever, because then they get infections and they get sick. And this is something that they're going to have every single month. And so it still blows my mind that sanitary pads are not free. I think it's such an insult as a woman to live in a world where a very natural process that I go through cannot be met with a product that I need. I know it's just happened in Scotland. I think it's the first country. New Zealand has followed, exactly. And I think we're going to start seeing different states in the US, and then suddenly we will start seeing different countries wake up to say, how are we not providing these freely for women and girls who need them? It blows my mind, and it's heartbreaking. We have access. We can talk about having access. So many people don't. Yeah. Even in countries where you think they do, they don't. They choose between food and pads. Yeah. And for something that you're going to have every single month. And then you have teen pregnancy, a very big link. I didn't have pads, so I had sex to get money to buy pads, but then in that I got pregnant. Yeah. Because you don't have a pad. So it should just, in 2-3 years, we shouldn't be having this conversation.
And the world of menstrual health has really evolved. Right now, they are one-off use towels, but they are also reusable towels. We have innovations like the period cup, which is a one-off investment, and then you forget. Yeah,
exactly, which is great. It's now becoming quite big here as well. It has been abroad for a while. Yeah, you can buy a cup, and 2 to 5 to even 10 years, you don't have to think about your period again. Yeah, it's godsend. You just need access to water, and cleaning the cup in itself needs its own care, which some people do not have access to. But those who do and it works for them, brilliant. I've spoken to quite a number of women who say it's changed their lives. Yeah. So that's really good. Reusable pads, people are still very iffy about it because you have to wash, your own blood, and then if you don't dry it well, you could get an infection. Yeah. But still, people have been able to save money from using. But right now, especially I think in our community and with our resources, disposable pads are the most easily accessible. And even when you go to different communities, they're the most accepted. Yeah. If you go there with different products, they're like, no, thank you.
Oh, we're still easing ourselves into that conversation.
Really are. Yeah, people who are menstrual cup advocates, for example, have still broken ground, right, in a lot of communities. So it depends. I think give girls and women their choice. So even as a menstrual health advocate, I like to talk about period choices. So you go out there with a bunch of choices. You tell people, here's a cup, here's a disposable pad, here's reusable, here's a piece of cloth, which I know sounds controversial, but for some people, that's all they have. So how do you make them use the cloth comfortably and in a dignified manner? And how do you teach them to wash it? Because privilege allows us to have pads. Not everyone has that access. So you just give them the options and then let them choose. A lot of the time they prefer disposable, but sometimes they say, oh, let me try this. So let's also just give women and girls their choices to use. It's important as well. Yeah.
And speaking of variety, as we nearly come to a close, it wasn't until I had a conversation with you and you mentioned your book, which I have read and was a big eye-opener on, when it comes to periods, you only know your story and the story you've shared with your friend. But there are so many women out there. There are women who are handicapped, there are women who are blind, there are women who are twins. The twin stories was my favorite. Yeah. That they also experience periods and they're different from what we experience. You're noble, you might not want to sell your book, but sell it.
I'm selling it. Am I looking there? Yeah. Okay. She's like, here. Yes, my first time is my book. Thanks for reading it. I love putting it together. It was really exciting for me because, I realized everyone's period story is so different. And if we're going to think about inclusive and holistic access and implementation, we have to think about everyone, and we're not all the same. And so initially it was going to be different stories, but I thought more about what happens to a woman who's blind, what happens to a woman who's in prison, what happens to a woman who has a physical disability, a woman who has special needs, all those people, and then you realize actually they don't feel catered for. They really don't. The woman who I profiled, who has a daughter who's living with Down syndrome, says it's so hard trying to explain to a special needs girl how to look after a parent until years later she's able to. Why isn't there material for them? Why isn't there material in Braille for the woman who's visually impaired? Because she really has to figure out her period in a different way.
Yeah.
And so I think it's one of the few books like its kind in the region. And I was just happy to also see our faces there. A lot of material, especially over the last few years, hasn't been representative of the African stories and the African setting. And that's another reason I was inspired to do the book. And it's people from Africa. I mean, Pinky's there. She's Indian, but she's grown up here. Yeah. And so I wanted it to be that holistic and inclusive. And I think the conversations online are an extension, because you can't get everyone's story. You can't. What about the refugee? What about the women in military base camps? They all have their own experiences. And so...
Oh my God, come to think of it.
Thank you. Liz Marami is the first female Marine pilot. She's a dear friend of mine. She says, one day I'll tell you about having your period on a ship, as one of like 3 women on board, and how she then has to kind of advocate for access to menstrual products on a ship, because it's mostly men.
Yeah.
She even said there wasn't a changing room for women until she had to advocate. So we're still far from equality and equity, even in those areas. The book is coming out again in about 2 weeks. I'm really excited because now we've added not just stories from Kenya, but from Africa. Yeah, so I was inspired during the pandemic. So first we did an addendum on COVID, because menstruators struggled during the pandemic badly, still are. Mm-hmm. And so I talk a little bit about that in the book. And then now there's stories from Africa, which, by the way, will blow your mind.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that women have to deal with from a cultural, and these are women who are a little more mature now, but when they talk about their first period when they were children in their settings, and some of them, the trauma that they dealt with when they started their period, you cannot believe it. So I'm really excited about this kind of revamp and new stories for the book. So it will be available by Menstrual Hygiene Day. As soon as it comes out, I'll make the announcement on social media. And right now I'm reviewing actually resources on my social media, books that people need to buy over and above my own. There's some incredible books that people need to buy about their period. There's books on menstrual disorders, books on period tax that's happening abroad, the menstrual health policy and strategy that was launched in Kenya last year, one of the first of its kind in the world. So I'm also amplifying a lot of different resources that I think people need to pick up and educate themselves on. And then I'll launch my book again soon. I'm really excited about the relaunch of the book.
Yeah, I'm also excited. Janet, yesterday when I was thinking about this interview, I thought of something. I said, I wish I was young during this time, because you've made it very normal to go through this. You've lifted that veil of secrecy and shame of periods. And it's not that bad, because I can be in my 20s and be comfortable, because women like you have pacified the way of making us feel like this is normal. For the little girls who are growing up in this age and era where you're doing this work, on their behalf, I want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's so moving. Yeah. That's really, and I love that you're doing this. I consider people like you period champions, like whether or not you want to, you have already proved that you're one by simply having this conversation. Yeah. So keep doing it, because people want to feel comfortable. And I noticed that on my space. When I started talking about it, the influx of messages made me realize people don't feel like they've had a safe space where they can talk about stains and menstrual disorders. And I just opened it up for everyone. Yeah. Like your story is important. Your story belongs. So even what you're doing with your platform already makes you somebody who's making it comfortable and normal. So kudos to you as well. And don't stop, because there's still the shame. People are still in their period closets. And the more of us who speak out and speak up for them, the more they're able to come out and say, I have this issue, or I'm confused about what's happening in my body, or I'm feeling ashamed, or I'm embarrassed. And we're just there to tell you, it's okay. You are fine. And if you do have a menstrual disorder, please have it looked at. I mean, menstrual disorders, Beatrice in my book talks about the fact that she wishes she had intervened then, because now she's not able to have a child. Yeah. And she's in her 50s though. So back then, she's like, who do I talk to? I don't know. All she knows is that my pain was excess, my flow was too heavy, I didn't know it was fibroids. And had I been able to have that checked early, I would have been able to have my family now. So I'm always like, please once you start your period, just visit a gynecologist, and then just make that a regular thing, again, if you have access. And I know we need to push our government to allow that kind of access for girls and women.
Yeah.
So just have it checked so that you're not sitting on a disorder that could be debilitating. And then look after yourself. I love that you talked about period hygiene. Do that. And then use your voice. If there's period inequity around you, use your voice to champion for those girls and women, because it's unfair that they have to have their period without that dignity. Yeah.
Janet, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, you too. Good to see you, and
Good
thank you for this. This was fun.
Yes, it was. Guys, that's all we had for you on the vlog. If there's anything that has resonated with you, the comment section is always open. We'll also attach Janet Mbugua's social media handles in case you don't follow her. I mean, she's a big deal. But we'll still attach it so you can go and make use of the material that she's sharing on her pages. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.